Yeat and Bnyx are one of the few people that can say they created a sound in the underground and brought it to mainstream. And a lot of producers have tried to figure out what the sound is, but then they essentially just copy his exact sound, which is not the way to go. But in Bnyx's massive discography, there's one thing that's been prominent in every single beat, is low end. Bnyx has found a way to implement multiple 808s and basses into one song, and the mix just somehow makes sense. And recently they've been doubling down on this alternative rock sound, so I'm sure in this upcoming Yeat album there's going to be a lot of influence of that. So in today's video I'm just going to be going over a beat that I made in the style of that. But before we get into it, be sure to leave a like and a comment if you guys enjoyed, and without further ado, let's get into it. So starting off with the loop, if I do these alternative rock beats, I almost always start off with the electric guitar, and the guitar sound that I used is from Slate Digital's NR2 Ultra Bundle, and they were kind enough to sponsor this video, so big shout out to them, and you'll hear more from them a bit later. And now moving on to the next sound, I had this other preset from NR2, and this is a bass preset called 808 or Reese. And onto the next preset, I have another one from NR2, and this is called VHS String Lead, and it sounds like this dry. And I wanted to keep that metallic sound, but I wanted to dumb it down a little bit. And the way I did this is I put on 3 separate EQs on. The first one helping to take out some low and high end. The second one, I just did some bumps at the low end and the high end. And with the third one, I just did a big pull down in the high end. And this kind of just helps calm down the metallic noise. And then I also used Saturator, which is a saturator plugin from Slate Digital. And all the plugins that I'm using in this video are featured in the all access pass. And in this pass, you get over 70 plugins, a bunch of masterclass videos, as well as lifetime updates on the plugins and all the new plugins that they release. And then after I added the saturation, I just half-timed the loop. And moving on to the next sound, I added a lead from NR2 again, and this one is called Chaotic Slide, and I just added this sound to the same mixer preset as the previous sound, so it has exactly the same plugins on. And now moving on to the last sound of the loop, I added another electric guitar. This one is called Dirty Chug, so this is how it sounds dry. And as you can see, I added on a bunch of effects to it, and the main one being their new bass enhancing plugin called Infinity Bass. And with this plugin, they have 4 different preset modes that you can choose from, and under those 4 preset modes you have 4 different parameters to play around with. And as you hover over the modes, you can see they have kind of a small description to them, but these are very big words for our small producer mind, so let me just break it down in the way that I understand it. Punchy, they say, is a bass exciter, but it basically just makes your 808s and bass sounds more punchy. Warm is a dual band subharmonic synthesizer, which basically just adds some warmth and saturation to your sound. Deep is a monophonic subharmonic synthesizer, and this basically just adds a subtone to your sound, kind of like adding an extra layer to your sub bass. And playing around with the parameters in this preset is really fun. And moving on to the last preset, we have Phased, which is a bass focused all pass filter, and this basically just plays around with the phase of your bass or 808, and this is really fun when it comes to sound designing. I think designing a bass on NR2 and then running it through a bunch of these effects plugins in the all access pass will help you come up with an endless amount of unique sounds. But back to Infinity Bass and the parameters at the bottom, the amount knob is basically like a mix knob that just applies the overall effect of the plugin. The frequency is basically where you want the plugin to target, so if you choose 90 on the frequency, it'll essentially apply the effects of the plugin on that specific frequency. Moving on, we have a character wheel, which is basically like a mod wheel, and this just increases overall modulation of the specific preset mode that you chose. And then lastly, you have an output gain knob, which essentially just bumps up the volume after the effects have been applied. And what I've realized with this plugin specifically is you can use it on a lot of things. It doesn't have to be your bass or 808 sound. As you can see, I'm using it on a random guitar. I also have it on my master preset and my 808, but we'll get into that. But I feel like the biggest upside of this plugin is it makes your beats just sound better on phone speakers and in the car. It really just amplifies the low end, and it just makes it sound way clearer, whether you use it on the entire beat or on specific sounds. And it's just been a go-to for me in the past month. But moving on from that, I have this chorus plugin from the kilohertz range, as well as FGX2, which which is basically a compressor. And then lastly, I added on an EQ to take out some of the lows and highs, as well as some reverb. And with this pattern, I laid it down and then I put it down in the playlist and chopped it up afterwards. And that is the entire loop. And now moving on to the drums, I started off with these hats. I then added a snare and a couple of accent snares. And then after that, I added on an open hat and a couple of crash sounds. And next up I had this NYC 808, and on the 808 I added on an instance of infinity bass, and I didn't go for a pre-made preset. I just chose the punchy preset mode, and then I just kind of played around with the parameters until I got the sound that I wanted. After that I added on this riser. And then lastly, I laid down this kick pattern. And then for the last icing on the cake, I added the full mix enhancer under the D preset mode. And this preset has been a go-to on my master for the past month now. And that is about it for the beat. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like and a comment, and be sure to check out Slate Digital in the description. Big shout out again for them sponsoring the video. Thanks again for the constant love and support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.